Hello, everyone. I'm Marta.
And I'm Ina, and welcome to a very special edition of Exploring Female Leadership by Keys2Success-Coaching.
We are super excited today. We usually sit down with inspiring women to discuss their journeys. But as we look ahead, we know that reshaping leaderships requires everyone at the table. To change the cultures, we need allies, especially those willing to look at their own power, not just their intentions.
Yeah, and that's why we're so thrilled to welcome Ben Saitz today. Ben is a veteran tech leader who has managed massive teams at companies like Salesforce, Google, Meta, and now he's at Netskope. And yeah, when we did our research, Ben is known for driving high operational efficiency, but he's perhaps best known by his team for something else.
So, Ben, one of your direct reports actually describes you as a talent magnet, and my personal favorite, cool as a cucumber. Ben, thank you so much for being here. We are very excited to have you, and welcome to the series.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. So thanks again for making time to spend time with me. I appreciate that. So yeah, I think just to be clear, I'm the Chief Customer Officer at Netskope. We are a cloud-based network security provider. We actually had our IPO last year, so it's exciting times, but it's also very early times. We've had one quarter of earnings, so it's very exciting to be here. Everyone thinks, the IPO is the end goal, but it really is kind of the beginning. And so now we have this need to deliver and perform at a higher level. So it's a super exciting time to be here.
Yeah, and we're so glad to have you, Ben. Thank you so much. Yeah, let's maybe start with that cool as a cucumber a reputation. So, we work in high pressure tech environments. And is that calmness a natural trait, or would you say it's a leadership discipline that you developed over time?
Yeah, I mean, I think that a couple things. One, I am actually very excitable. I'm a very enthusiastic, excitable person in my nature, but I think it's taken me a while in my career to realize how much the tone leaders set rubs off on their teams. And implicitly or not, I've consistently seen people emulate leaders. And so whoever the boss acts like, people do that, whether they mean to or not. That just becomes kind of a de facto behavior. And sometimes it's really good, sometimes it's less good. For me, I think I just want to give off a sense of like, we got this. Whatever comes at us, we'll figure it out. Let's work together. I think if people see me start to get like all rattled, then they're gonna feel like, okay, well, I can get rattled too. And so the way it's two things. One, it's how you manage stressors and unexpected events that happen every day. And so you have to be able to make that like that's just part of the job. That's what we do. We can navigate this. And part of that is how you treat people. And I think the way you treat people is also emulated. So it's not just the work and the situations, it's how do you show up in terms of how you treat your colleagues, how do you talk about people across the organization, how do you treat your directs and people in your org. For me, that's the one that I think is most important in terms of setting the culture in terms of behaviors with regards to the team around you.
Thanks for sharing, Ben. So what I'm hearing is that calm is not a personality trait; it's more like an operating system,
Yes.
right? And to your point, when leaders regulate themselves, they regulate the team. So yeah, that's indeed very powerful. Now,
It's like when you think about culture and values. Sorry, when you think about culture and values, what I talk about in terms of culture is how do people show up when the boss isn't looking? So if you're on the phone with a customer and the boss isn't listening and no one's there to monitor your behavior, those are the moments when a culture and values really show up because you believe in them and you'll act on them even when you're not worried about consequences. And I think the way you treat people is another extension of that. So how do I want people to act and behave when I'm not in the room? People will act very differently when I'm in the room, when I'm not in the room. So, but the way that culture shows up is when no one's watching, when the boss isn't there, how you treat your colleagues, how you treat your customers. And so that's the kind of way you want this to work out over, through the organization, in my view.
yeah, I completely agree, Ben. Building on that, there is a myth that says that you can't be empathetic and drive hard results. You've managed, as Ina mentioned, huge teams. How do you balance that?
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, the empathetic part, that's that's in my nature as well. I don't have to try, but I think there's a value in that in terms of being authentic to yourself. And so um, that's how I show up. That's how I show care for the people and the team and the organization. But at the end of the day, it is a business and results matter. And the scoreboard needs to be, we have to be victorious on the scoreboard. And so I think you can do both. I don't think it's a choice where you have to be empathetic or drive results. And I think that in terms of the results, people have to know you still care about them as individuals. And even if they're failing at their job, it's not that you don't care about them, but we have to be accountable to the business and to customers. In my case, we're a public company, to Wall Street and investors and so on. And so I think you can have both. It's just being clear about these are the expectations. And if you aren't successful, I still can care about you as a human being. I just might need to say, hey, listen, this just might not be the role for you. And that's okay too. And I think
Thank you so
even
much.
even when I think about cases where results weren't met and changes had to be made, you still want to do that in a caring way. We still want to do it in a humanistic way. Because going back to what we said, that's how people will, understand how the organization treats people.
So Ben, what I'm hearing is that your leadership style is about backbone and heart. You can be empathetic, but of course, I mean, we're in a company, you drive the results, which again comes back to authenticity and, going into the room the way you are. Which leads us a bit to a double bind that we've seen in the industry. So women are often penalized for the very same behaviors men are rewarded for, right? For being too tough, too soft, too, pushing too much, being too assertive. So, as a male leader who has been in a room at pretty huge companies, have you witnessed that?
I have for sure. I think I always tell people everything's situational. There is no rules, there is no right, you really have to have some EQ, look at the company you're in, and be able to adapt to that. And so that goes, and that to be fair, that goes for men and women. I'll give like a fun example. I was at Tableau, and Tableau was a great company. I loved working there. The culture of Tableau was very different than the culture from Salesforce. And so when we got acquired, you kind of had to like take a step back and understand, okay, well, how are these Salesforce people operating? How do they treat one another? How do they communicate? Because the norms of Tableau, not good or bad, not Salesforce good or bad, but they weren't the same. And so you had to kind of change and adapt. And that was for men and women in terms of how you show up every day and how executives show up, how cross-functional teammates show up. And so I think any of us has to constantly be looking and listening and adapting. When you get acquired, it's like almost like a new job. If you start a new job tomorrow, you have to show up and say, well, how did I act in my last job? And is that the same way these people work? And probably not. And so how do I like look around and listen and adapt to what's around me? And I think that is very much men and women. I've seen men fail the same way. They didn't adapt to a new company, new culture, or a new job. So I think it really is expected of anybody.
Thanks for sharing, Ben. I completely agree that adaptability is key, right? To make sure that you understand and read the room and you know how to flex yourself. However, I think sometimes women feel pressure to emulate the tough guy persona, right? To fit into the boys' club. I think women tend to be more empathetic. Have you seen women pay a double penalty, right? Being criticized for being inauthentic since they are trying to emulate somebody that they are not, and also for not fitting into the expected mold.
Yeah, I agree. I think, like you said, it's probably as important for women to both be authentic, but not just read the room. But what I guide is look at women who are successful and look how they show up and how they behave, and try and learn from them. Because in any company, there is some women who are successful. Maybe they're in one department, maybe they're not in your department, but you have to pay extra attention to how they are successful. And so whether it's somebody in marketing or HR or in sales leadership, really pay close attention to other women, not just men. Because if you're a woman, you try and emulate a man, you're going to probably show up differently than who you are. And so now that you can emulate all of the qualities of another woman in the workplace, but just look for the behaviors, the signs, the patterns that they demonstrate, and then in an authentic way, try to make them your own. But to your point, like you can't, show up and try and be a man and be a bulldog, whatever. You've got to just be who you are. And then Honestly, like I said, results matter. So if you know your business, if you're really smart, if you know your data and your facts, and communicate those effectively, those are the things that are going to carry the day. And people will see your ideas and how you think and how you communicate, and the gender stuff will fall to the background.
Ben, you have a reputation for building diverse teams. And I mean, we've heard the phrase no culture fit often used in the context to exclude people who are different. How do you fight that bias in hiring?
It's funny you said earlier about talent magnet. I think, one of the things that about that, it's not about me per se, but I wish companies were better able to measure. It's not really a metric, but how many people follow you from job to job? I think that is an extremely telling question. When you get called for a reference, one of the questions I'll always ask you is, would you hire that person again? Which is interesting as well, but that's not the same as actually having people follow you from job A to job B. And I'm humbled and proud of the people I can think of who follow me from job A to job B, just telling that they enjoy working with me, and that really is a really great sign. But to your point, I think there is this always question of like apples hire apples. People like to hire people who think like they do and talk like they do and get things done the way they do, and it's a trap you can fall into. And so I think now with really good hiring assessments and debriefing, you can find a much more effective way to work those biases out by just if I hire someone who I hire by myself with my own decision, my own question set, my own criteria, I'm going to probably fall into some traps, some bias traps. But if I have three or four people, each looking at a different set of competencies within the candidate, we have a good, rigorous debrief. Maybe the recruiting team is there keeping us objective and fact-based. You get a really good outcome. And I think about the times when I've been a part of those processes, and you really feel it works. You really feel like you get to the right outcome. You really feel that people are able to, if you can create a room and an environment where people will speak their minds and own their opinions, you can really get to the right outcomes. And if you do it that way, where it's purely a competency-based set of questions and people are challenging one another, you'll find more often than not, you'll feel good about the outcome. And it is less, there's less bias in the decision making than otherwise. When you feel like a hiring process is short-circuited and overweighted towards one person's opinion, and they say, "Well, I know that person," and I've seen a bunch of anecdotes where you look at a misfire on the hiring, and the one of the root causes was, well, that person vouched for them, so we went with them. And there is a value in, hiring referrals and people you've worked with. I mean, we talked about the talent magnet piece. So there is a value in that, but you can't make that like the sole reason that someone joins an organization.
Thank you, Ben, for sharing. That's very powerful, and I just taking away that how important is to be self-aware, and also how to put different systems in place to avoid some of the bias that comes naturally in some cases. Thank you for sharing. Now we are in the last part of our series, unfortunately, but we would like to close with some actionable advice. So first of all, for the men watching, if a male VP wants to be a better ally, what is one concrete behavior that they should start this quarter with?
So we have, this is not a plug. We have a program in my company called A1. So it's the Awesome Women of Netskope. And so they pair up women who want a mentor in the organization. And I've been participating in that for years now. I think I'm on my third or fourth mentee in the program. And I'm going to use this as a lesson that I've learned through this program, which is if get a female mentee from someplace outside of your organization. So it's a really safe space. Like I have one now who is a sales rep, previously was someone in the PMO in the engineering organization. And the reason I think it's been so powerful is you just learn a different perspective of someone else in the company, a more junior female worker, and what her experience is like. And if you can get a really good connection where they're being very open about and vulnerable about their concerns, their aspirations, their challenges, you get to pay it forward and give back. B, you get to connect dots and help them understand a little bit more about the business that they may not have full visibility into, but you just hear a lot of really interesting insights about like what their day-to-day work is like. And you can coach a little bit, but I can't coach everything because I'm not a female. And so I don't know what the journey is like of a female salesperson who's moving into her career. But you can give some generalized advice about how to be successful, how to show up, how to collaborate, how to work with your boss. And I've had female mentees before, but this program has really helped me kind of reset my lens on how to help women succeed in the workplace, how to better empathize with what their journey and their work is like. And so you don't need a program. You just got to like figure out how to connect with someone across your organization and you'll learn a ton, a ton. It's amazing how much I've learned about how engineering works, how sales works from a different lens than I would ever be able to. So, my work close, I work for the CRO, so I can talk to him about what the sales team is like. I talk about that every day, but that's a very different view than a brand new rep who's been here for 6 months, who's working, thinking about her career, has personal struggles that are affecting her work. I mean, all the things that are reality, I just have a really, really front view seat on. It's just been really, really amazing.
So coming back to adaptability in the situation again. So Ben, that was a great tip for male VPs who want to be allies. What about the women who want to progress to the next level, to an executive level? What is the hard truth they need to hear?
I think, and it's funny, the ones that I work with, I'm seeing it more. It's really making me very proud. Is knowing how to advocate for yourself, and and it's not going in there and pounding on tables and say I demand, but it's saying, hey, I have aspirations too. I want to advance my skills. I want to advance my career. Help me understand what that looks like. Help me partner with me, build a plan to get there. And I think. It's not just trusting your boss entirely. It's not just hoping things work out. You have to take some responsibility for that. But as we said, in an authentic way, you can't go in there and be a bulldog and say, "I demand to be VP tomorrow." That's unrealistic and that's lacking self-awareness. But it's good to start that conversation early and have a plan. And the ones who I see who I'm really inspired by, are the ones who take a good deal of initiative. And so they'll come, that's where the mentee mentor relationship really can be a good starting point is when I have mentees, their responsibility is to bring the agenda, bring the topics. My responsibility is time. I will provide my time, but they have to own and drive the content, the conversations, the meetings. And that's a good sort of blueprint for how to think about their career. And so that's what we'll say is, okay, are you having conversations like this with your boss? Are you bringing content to the one-on-ones about your work, your skills, your career? Being passive and waiting for someone to come down and deliver this to you is not the road to success. And so here's another example of how I've seen the recent enjoyment that I've had from this mentee work have a pretty good parallel to women being successful in their careers.
Thank you, Ben. Completely agree. Self-advocacy and proactiveness is key for
Yeah.
career success and career growth overall. So, Ben, to end this series, we would like to ask you something more forward-looking. So, in a world increasingly shaped by AI and rapid change, where execution is faster and information is everywhere, what do you think will separate leaders who stay relevant from those who become obsolete?
There are a couple things, and one of them I think we've talked about it a little bit, but I'm going to say it again. So taking initiative is so so important and so simple. And it's not a woman thing or a man thing, but certainly, whatever you're in, and this goes to AI, but anything else, are you taking a lot of initiative? If you're waiting to be told what to do next, that's not going to get you as far along as someone who's taking a lot of initiative. And I just had a woman join my team last week or so, and universally, she is perceived as a go-getter. Like, she's just a go-getter. She gets things done. She wants the hard challenges. She will make meetings with people without having to be told in an assertive way. And it's just inspirational to see how she does that. And I know she's going to be incredibly successful for those kind of reasons. The other thing I would say, and that goes for AI. So are you sitting around, wondering about AI? Are you spending an hour here and there playing with AI and experimenting and finding new ways to do so? And there's a gentleman on my team who is now like far and away the expert on how to use AI and gave a speech to the team yesterday about how he's using it, and people were blown away. They didn't even know it was possible. So now he is an invaluable resource because he has taken things on his own, done amazing work, and is now sharing that with the organization. So those are the kinds of things where anybody will benefit from. The second thing is, I guess it's kind of two sides of the same coin. So one is I say have a nose for the ball. Like, what are the things that are most positively impactful for the organization? And then try and maintain some adjacency towards those. You're doing the things for the sake of doing them, doing the things because this is what your boss told you to just do. That might be part of the job. That's okay, but always thinking about what are the most impactful opportunities for the business, for the team, and how do I get attached to those? How do I work on those? generally is something to be very, very aware of. And so like, for me, that's like always looking for the projects or the people where it has an outsized impact on the business versus just kind of standard KPIs.
Ben, thank you so much. This has been such a powerful conversation. And what stands out to me is that leadership, I think, especially in today's environment, is a discipline. As we were talking, right? Being calm is a discipline, allyship is a discipline. And as you were saying now, right? Being proactive, getting yourself outside of the comfort zone and focusing on impact is also a discipline. So in a world shaped by rapid change and AI, from I'm taking from you is that the leaders who stay relevant won't be the loudest, but they will be the most intentional on doing things. Thank
Yes.
you.
Well said. Well said. Thank you very much for having me. Enjoy the conversation. I love the work you guys are doing. So whatever I can do to help support it, please let me know.
Thank you so much, Ben. Very much appreciate you taking the time.
You got it.
So
Great.
to our community, if this conversation resonated, share it with someone who is serious about leading differently. We will see you next time on Exploring Female Leadership. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Ben.
Bye.